Ask the Podcast Coach for March 29th, 2025.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music. That means it's Saturday morning. It's time to get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from theschoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. And thanks for putting up with my shenanigans last week. Like, I went back and listened to the show. That is, last week's show is a primer on how not to run a live podcast from my perspective. I should have gone outside. I should have taken it to the shed. I should have, I am so distracted. It is somehow we pulled it off. But as I was watching, I was going back and watching myself, I thought, hey, friend, eliminate the distractions. Don't try to, they're drilling through the ceiling down here. Don't do that. That's dumb. Stop doing that. I was shouting at myself, stop doing that. So anyway, thanks, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me last week.
That might be one of those cases where you're a little harder on yourself than the audience is.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, I don't know. But on the other hand, Danny Brown is calling you a bloody hooligan. So.
Oh yeah. I have the Leprechaun Chase shirt on.
Oh, today, I see what's going on.
Yeah, there it is. There it goes. So.
Yeah, but I see you've grabbed the pot. Yeah, there you go. We'll pour some coffee, and of course that coffee pour is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. If you're watching the video of this, he's done the School of Podcasting. He's done Ask the Podcast Coach. He's done Podcast Rodeo Show. He did, back in the day, your podcast website. He did podcast. He's done a lot of my artwork, and I am always happy with it. It's the beautiful thing is Mark sits down with you one-on-one, figures out what your brand is. You don't have to really, because so many people it's kind of like this or that. Tell him what your show is. Maybe let him listen to an episode. He'll figure it out. He's the marketing guy. Let the marketing guy do the marketing. You're the content person, and he's going to come back and give you a few examples of, hey, what do you think about this or that and that, and you kind of fine-tune it until you get exactly what you want. He's an award-winning graphic artist. He's been podcasting since 2013. That's the bonus. You don't have to explain to your graphic artist what a podcast is, and then your graphic artist goes, oh, that's that thing on YouTube where they have a microphone in the shot. No, that's not it. So there's only one place to go when you want to look professional, and that is podcastbranding.co. Be sure to tell him that Dave and Jim sent you.
Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on truestorypodcast.com. I mentioned it last week, and it's the title of my favorite movie ever, Bridge on the River Kwai. I just like saying that. Bridge on the River Kwai. It sounds good. A movie from I'm going to say maybe the 60s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
You want to check it out today. He's got it available for you. Of course, Dan always does a great job. Check it out today, based on a truestorypodcast.com. And Dan, as always, thanks for the coffee and thanks for your sponsorship. I should say the mug. The mug is still spectacular. I'm not going to lie. This thing, I have taken this mug. It's had coffee. It's had Guinness. Which is appropriate for today.
It is.
It's such a great mug. So Dan, thanks for sponsoring that, and thanks for sending me such a great mug. I mean, it's just been awesome. So appreciate it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Jeff C. popping in from the Dallas Fort Worth Airport Lounge on his way to Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. That's a great conference. That's a fun one. I don't know if they do the aircraft carrier anymore, but the one time I was lucky enough to go and talk, they had the opening night meet and greet on an aircraft carrier in the bay there in San Diego. It's pretty crazy. So that's always fun. Let's just, here, first of all, I want to talk about something. Well, we're going to talk a little Spotify today. And some of it's kind of interesting. And then this is from The Feed. That's a show from Libsyn. You can find it at thefeed.com. And there's a guy named Young God is his podcast name. And this was the story that I heard.
To that.
Here we go.
So this is what Young God said. Quote, Spotify deleted my podcast for no reason and without any warning whatsoever. On the 12th of March, 2025, at about 11 p.m., I received an email from YouTube saying that they no longer had access to my podcast feed. Almost immediately, I checked my hosting provider, Spotify for Creators, to find that I had lost access to my Spotify accounts on all devices, without any warning or reason. Efforts to retrieve them have proven unsuccessful. It's as if my account and podcast never existed. I have been informed that this is irreversible. Fans of the show who listen on Spotify have reached out saying that they can't find my podcast. Their saved episodes and playlists all gone. The fans and I are both stunned by this development, and I deeply apologize for the interruption. At the moment, The Young God is unavailable on most podcast platforms except YouTube and Apple Podcasts. New episodes can no longer be uploaded to those feeds, unfortunately. For 7 years, I've hosted the podcast on Spotify for Creators. It used to be Anchor, and I've never had any issues until now. 7 years worth of content, reviews, data, and analytics gone. 266 episodes worth of blood, sweat, and skill gone. Access to over 30 million potential
We get
ears,
it. It's gone.
Gone. Just like that. My podcast no longer streaming on Spotify is a severe blow to my discoverability and marketing strategy. I have had a few days to come to terms.
Okay, that's enough of that. But anyway, it turned out, if I remember right, he wasn't playing music, but he had music in his show. But the thing is, same thing with Facebook. If they pull you, there is often no way to argue. It's like you're gone. So, and the other thing was kind of fun. Like I tried to log in and couldn't on any device. Well, like saying if you lost access to your Gmail, I tried on my phone, I tried on my desktop. Yeah, if it's gone, it's gone. But and the reason I bring that up, it's Danny says it's clear his podcast was controversial. Nothing wrong with that. It's an opinion, but don't be surprised if you break your terms and get kicked off. Yeah. So that was the other thing I heard. And then the other one, I'm getting these confused, was there's one called Podcast Super Friends with Matt Kundell and a bunch of people. And I know Matt, and I think they put on an episode once a month. And there was a guy that does a show where he talks about music. It's something like looking back at the top 10s through the years. And apparently he was playing some of the music or something like that. But same thing, got taken down. And I was like, okay, so that's the only, when it comes to apps removing things. Now, here's the thing. This is where we don't know. Is it that Apple is removing these as well and they're just not getting the attention? Or is it really just, because I know when I hear Todd Cochran talk about having to remove shows, it's Spotify notified him. And when I hear Rob Walsh talk about it's Spotify. When I hear it's like, and so on the podcast Super Friends, yeah, it was Spotify that removed shows. So they seem, they're a little more picky because, again, they kind of want, at least they used to be, I don't know if they still do, they want to be the place for podcasts. Like everything is here in Spotify. You don't need to leave. They even have now, you can upload video shorts. And I was like, I've never seen that idea before. Wow. So just be careful with that. So that's
you're the product, right? I mean, that you don't, they're trying to protect their platform. And so when you've crossed that line, I'm sure somebody complained and they pulled them off. They have not they're not going to bring you back. I mean, that's kind of the reason they kicked you off in the first place, right? The no notification is always a little sketchy to me. But I understand. Like that's probably an automated process that happens, right? They click a button and zoop, off you go, right? Kind of deal.
Yeah, Danny says, and to be fair, Spotify contacts both the user and the hosting platform to advise that they've been removed. And he says any hosting platform is the same as is web hosting. If you want full control and protection from being kicked off a platform, you need your own server.
You do. Yeah. Listen, if you're going to do controversial stuff, you got to host your own. You got to host your own feed. I mean, I never worry about. Now, I don't do controversial stuff, but I never worry about Christian taking down my.
Right.
I host at Maple Grove Partners. He's both a web and media host provider. He gladly hosts the media. I push that to all the various places through his servers. It is a single point of failure, however, in he could go down at any time, right? Or he could just say, he's not gonna, but he could say,
Right.
I'm out of business. Listen, anybody can do that. You have to have, I think as a podcaster, you have to think of not only backing up your files, but backing up your feed. Like, what am I doing if the feed, especially with now that we know Spotify as both a host and a provider, this is where Apple's different, right? They don't host the stuff for you, right? You should be thinking like, okay, what if my host, whoever it is, Buzzsprout, Pullbean, Shenanigan, McGannigan, whoever they are, right? You should say
yes.
Podomatic, whoever it is.
You should
be no, I think they closed. But it's a great name.
Yeah.
You should be thinking like, what's my backup strategy for my RSS? How am I if I do get pulled from Spotify, or if I do whatever I ever get taken down, where do we go next? And you have to have a plan for that.
See, I've never thought about that because I've got all the episodes.
Yeah.
I don't have the show notes. You know what I mean? That's in the feed.
Oh yeah.
So that's one of those where you should, in theory, every now and then open up your feed in Chrome, so you get a bunch, you get a faithful of code, copy that, paste it. That's never thought about that. And that's where
go ahead.
That's where the no notification, which again is probably just went to a spam or whatever, because if you leave a media host, you can, import it into, let's say you're moving to Captivate. They make it super easy. You just throw your feed in, they suck it in, and there's your show, and you're ready to go. You redirect, and you're ready to go. But that's the other thing. If it's gone and you lost your account, now you're at the mercy of Spotify support to go, hey, can you redirect that over here now, please? And that could, that's icky.
I was thinking about me I hadn't thought about the notes ends of things. Like I thought, am I backing up my notes? Yeah. I have a WordPress site. It does a regular backup to another location. In theory, if my web and media hosting cratered, I could set up a WordPress instance somewhere else and just restore the backup, and I'd have all the, I'd have all my show notes and metadata and all those things from the website there. So just make sure, that this is a really good example of, okay, it's great. You're backing up your audio and your video or whatever you have for it. But you might want to think about what's the next, if I had to jump feeds super fast, where would you, I've been loading, I'm not saying this is what you should do, by the way, I'm just saying, but I've been loading all of my podcasts to Red Circle as well. It's just one of those, it's a free plan. It's over there. They do a pretty good job. They're a fairly good host. Like I could probably move, I'm not recommending it because I've never done this before, but I could probably move my feed to Red Circle. Sorry, the brain's a little fried. We'll find out why here in a few minutes, but Red Circle, pretty fast. That would be every week I just load it there as well. So that might be an option.
And if you get enough downloads, you can get some of that sweet podcast money. I think about every 2 months I get a check for like $9-10, something like that, because I have my old weight loss show on that, which still gets
from
some
where? Red Circle?
From Red Circle, yeah.
Oh,
you can opt into a put ads in my stuff kind of plan. So they have a really pretty cool, if you want to do dynamic insertion of your own stuff, you make folders and you're like, here's topic A, and then here's topic B, and then you can say, at this point, play 2 random spots from folder A, and then over here, play 1 random spot from this folder. It's kind of interesting. I was like, all right. And then I was like, that's on their free plan. So if you wanted to, I always say when people are like, oh, Spotify, it's free. I'm like, look, hobbies cost money, and I will say that if you're on the free plan, this, Jim, if you're on the free plan in Red Circle, you're going to click on some screens that go, yeah, you need to upgrade, and you have to be okay with that. That does get kind of annoying, but upgrade then. That's the whole point. It's supposed to be annoying. They want you to upgrade. That's how they stay in business. But yeah, it's weird. Their website is weird because if you went to their website, you'd swear they were a florist because they have this big picture of a flower. And I'm like, it's kind of different.
Or Target. Target. Some of
Yeah.
their circle things look a lot like
Yeah.
Target, and they're red, of course. I mean, they're
Yeah.
Target red.
Yeah.
So you think you're on target. I
Yeah.
had one more piece of advice from a podcast, a fellow podcaster, Dave McCabe, when we
Yeah.
were doing Home Service Show and I started, is he said to me, make sure you have a manual backup of all your stats all the time from everywhere. You know, he had a spreadsheet where he brought in his YouTube stats and he brought in his podcast stats, and anywhere else he was getting stats on a monthly basis, he would go over there, grab those numbers and bring them down and kind of keep them locally. I also heard in there, 7 years worth of stats that are gone. That's your fault. Like
Yeah.
if you're depending on your host provider to keep your stats for you, that's a gigantic mistake. You need to get some form, either be exporting them and if they allow that and storing them, or at least at a minimum getting a copy, getting a high level copy of them and what they are. It'll take you a half an hour, maybe an hour every month to go in and copy your stats. But if you care about your stats, if you need them for advertising, you better have a backup of those stats available. And it's your fault if they go away. So get it done.
Dan said that on that episode of the feed with Elsie and Rob, there's a tool, RSS to CSV tool from Scooter Labs, to back up the data and the RSS feed locally. Because I'm an old Excel nerd, there is a way. I have a video on my YouTube channel somewhere from probably 10 years ago where you can do this in Excel and open up an XML file. You have to add a special thing for it to do that, but
plug in or something.
Yeah. But Danny says from Captivate, if your host supports it, create a playlist with its own RSS feed and add every single episode of that playlist. All the media files, the show notes, saved to that playlist. So that's kind of cool. Then John says, should we worry about hosts in the UK due to free speech differences between the US and Europe? That's a great question. Because, in Europe, you can get in trouble for hurting someone's feelings. So if I go, Jim, that shirt looks dirty, and you go, oh, that made me feel, oh, now, again, I'm poking fun, but I've heard where people get, like, arrested because you called someone a booger. And I'm like, really? So that's where we're getting that from the U.S. side. So.
Yeah, no, right on. I mean, listen, we're in a mode of deglobalization, and all kinds of things everywhere are happening. You should be worried about all your stuff everywhere all the time, anyways, regardless of the situation. Always have a backup of your files. Always have a backup of your feed. Make sure you've got some kind of contingency plan if something craters. You should never have, for things that are important, you should never have them in just one place. I mean, I think this is just common sense, friends. So just make sure you look through your processes and say, hey, do I have a backup of all this stuff somewhere? Or if it's important to you, make sure it's backed up somewhere.
I have taken a different approach where now, for the most part, I just save the finished MP3. I used to save all the old, but after, you go over 900 episodes and that's just one show after a while. And I know, drive space is cheap, but I'm like, I've never had to go back to, episode 137 and, tweak that. I'm like, you know what? What am I doing this for? I got the MP3 file. I may regret that someday, but I've kind of quit saving because everything was WAV files. And the other thing was, and it's not a bad thing, but when you make when you save a project, I think in Hindenburg, it saves all the files that you use, which is great, which is your intro again and your outro again and all your sound effects again, so I'm like, I don't really need these. So I've just gone to that. Now, since we said something that doesn't paint Spotify, and again, as Danny said, and Rob said this too, if you break the terms of service, like you can say, I don't like the movie Snow White. It sounds really stupid. And I kind of wonder what's going on with Congress, because that meme will not go away. People are just losing their minds that Snow White, a movie about a prince and a love story, and they changed it to a movie about a woman who feels empowered and overthrows the government. Not at all different. Didn't like it. And that story will not go away. Like, when I made the mistake of watching one video on YouTube, and now it's just like how much people hate that actress. Now,
Mhm.
you can say I hate that movie, but if I say we should kill, I don't even know what her name is, but when you start saying killing people, and there are lines that are drawn, and that's where you've crossed it, and that's what got Alex Jones in some of his hot water. Rob has talked about this, where he can voice his opinion, but the minute you start saying we need to attack these, we need to, like, no, you've done that. So that's, from what it sounds like, that might have been the case with this young god guy or whoever, and maybe the guy just thinks he's a god and he can say anything. And there is freedom of speech. That doesn't mean that there is freedom of consequences. So with that said, I've heard two people now talk about this thing I'm going to throw on the screen, which is a different stat. And I don't know how I missed this. I guess, number one, most of my shows don't get a lot of play on Spotify, not a ton. But I don't go in here looking at my analytics, because usually it's just depressing. But there's this analytics where you can see how many times your show appeared kind of in a search. So people you reach. So they say this is the number of distinct people who have, basically seen your content in Spotify. And then you have 18 in our case. So we had 139 people. And, the one thing that's cool about Zoom on Ecamm, the bad news is you have yet another window to get out of the way. People who showed interest. So in our case, we had a 13% conversion. This is the number of distinct people who interacted with your show. This includes people who have gone to your show page or episode page and added your episode to a playlist, followed your show, or played an episode on Spotify for 0 seconds, which is a weird phrase. I played your show for 0 seconds, but basically what that, I'm taking that as they clicked on something. They saw your show, 139 people, 18 of those people clicked on it, and then you can see where 14 people over the last 30 days, I wish you could change that rate. This is the number of distinct people that played an episode in your catalog on Spotify for at least 60 seconds. And I was like, So if you ever wonder, like, if I'm not, let's say my show doesn't do individual show art, it would be great. I should do this for the future of podcasting, because we don't do separate show art, and change this and see if it makes a difference. Because this is kind of a YouTube thing. You can see how many impressions you had, how many click-throughs and things like that. Then down here, it shows you that most of this came from Spotify search, Spotify home, Spotify library, or other Spotify features, which I'm not sure what those are. But I looked at this, and in the last 30 days, it was like I had what appears to be a large spike compared to the rest. Now it's 142 versus, 55. So it looks really big on the screen because it's like triple the size. And so I looked at what episode did we do, and it was about YouTube Shorts and YouTube. And if I go over to episodes here and look at that kind of date, yeah, shorts versus longs. Which one is the true engagement? So that apparently caught people's attention. And if I go over to the other thing down at the bottom, and I haven't figured this out because I just started playing with this morning. You know how I talk about how you can use Google links and UTMs to see where your traffic is coming from? That's basically what they've created here. Danny says this is where YouTube nails analytics. They give you all the info to go with these 10,000 feet overviews from Spotify. Yeah, so it kind of looked like this is what Spotify is kind of trying to get into. I already mentioned that when you log in, that they're kind of saying, hey, shorts are here. You can upload short clips. And I'm like, okay, but I haven't figured out how to make, I know I can go to an episode and make a trackable link. And you can, like, here, these links, like the default link, I can go on the right-hand side of your screen and say, copy this link. And then if somebody, like, I put that into my pod page so I could see, in theory, how many people, again, came through that link, and then how many of them clicked on it, and then how many actually, because in the end, we started off with 140 people. We got 10% of them, roughly, to actually listen to something. And that might be something that, it's one of those, like, okay, this is a clue to what? Well, maybe you need better episode titles. Maybe episode 16 is not getting people to click on things. Maybe artwork might make it stand out or whatever. So I'd Jeremy Enns, who's a guy that does the podcast something marketing report. In fact, yesterday was the last day to do that. Really good report, really nice guy. And he talked about it, and then I forget who else I heard talk about it. And I was like, apparently I need to log into Spotify and look at my stats. But I just thought it was interesting. Now, of course, their little link tracking thing is all about driving people to Spotify, which, of course, why wouldn't they? But it was just, I was like, all right, more stats to obsess over. I was hoping we could get more of those. So that's always fun.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
good stuff.
And speaking of people obsessing over things, there were 6,000 people obsessing over Jim Cullison this week?
Well, okay, let's not get crazy here. We offered a learning event for the week for our certified coaches at Gallup. We had 6,000 folks register for it. Now, 6,000 out of 20, we have 20,000 certified coaches. I was hoping for more like 50% as opposed to, whatever, 30%, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But 6,000 is pretty good still. Right? We'll take 6,000. We did 11 episodes across 4 days. So 3 episodes a day, basically. These are live. They'll be able to watch the recordings in a couple weeks. We made it available with translations. So we had AI translations going in, 10 or 12 languages, something like that. And it was just days of learning. We started at 10. We did another one at 1 p.m. So 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and then 9 p.m. Trying to grab all the different time zones, or at least make it as time zone friendly as possible. It's really hard to do. By the way, that's really, really hard to do. And I hosted all of them. And so
that's
you think
nuts.
11. Yeah. 11. So I opened them, and then, so I had a script that I would read to open things up, and then we'd allow, or we go into a presentation, full presentation. It became a webinar at that standpoint, or at that point. And then at the end, we take Q&A from the audience. Dave, I think the hardest part about it all wasn't the content, wasn't opening it or closing it, is managing the chat room with 1,500 people. Right, we averaged about 1,500 people live in there each time.
Nuts. That's just where it's just going. Yeah,
it goes fast. It goes fast. We opened. I think for most people doing an event like that, they keep it. They don't try to moderate it, or they don't try to pay attention to it. We had a chat and a Q&A. We'd ask them to put their questions in Q&A to monitor them that way, and then just the regular chatting go on. They still put questions in chat, and I still got chat and Q&A, but we figured that out. The hard part is during the presentation, then moderating those questions, because we had about 10 minutes for Q&A. In some cases, that's maybe 2 questions. So how do you take 20 or 25 questions coming in, pick the 2 best, and then consolidate the rest of the questions to see if you can at least cover some of those? Yeah, you could go back in and answer them in Q&A. The platform we use, that Q&A disappears. But it's a busy week. I found by Thursday, so we wrapped it up Thursday at 10 a.m. I was done by 11. I couldn't think anymore. Like felt like a race car that had been gone full throttle for 4 days, and it needed an oil change. Like I couldn't. I was struggling yesterday during a podcast. We did my regular Friday podcast at work, and words would not come. You're like, my brain could know them, but sometimes I couldn't just get them out of my mouth.
Well, this is where people talk about batch recording and recording a bunch of shows in one day. You have, I can't imagine, especially with a chat room, that you have the adrenaline spike of I am very aware of what's going on. And then it's over for a couple hours. And then you have I remember when I was a teacher, I'd get done at 5:00. 5:30, I'm in the middle of a clogged up freeway, and my brain is like, you need a nap. Like the adrenaline is gone, and then to turn around and go, okay, bring it back up. Okay. And it's Jim and I'm ready to go. And then when it's done, it's like, and to do that repeatedly all week. Yeah. I could see where your brain might be a little fried just a bit.
My watch thought I had worked out on Monday. Like it was, I closed all the rings. I had literally been sitting in a chair most of the day, right? Doing things. I had no workout, no gym time, no. In fact, I canceled my workouts, my morning workouts with that week. or this week, just because I knew it was going on. But my watch had said, but that's the proof to the adrenaline spike, right? And that is true. On Monday, that very first one, I had to shake my hands out. Like there was so much adrenaline going through my body before before we opened that. And then you're right, each episode you get a little spike. And then I drive home in the afternoon, and I had trouble staying awake in the car on the way home.
Yeah.
Your head is just bobbing. And then I turn around and drive in at 7:30 to get there an hour ahead of time, and then do a show at 9 p.m. And I'd have to kind of rev it back up again, although the situation will rev you back up, and then get back in the car, drive home. So a lot to it. It is. I like your analogy to kind of a batch process. As we talk about batch processing, that's one of the drawbacks to it. But also, that being said, there's brain fatigue, which we often don't think about in this setting, where I was on and intently on. Is that the right word? It was an intense, like I was just. It was very intense brain processing. And that's fatigue. You get tired doing those kinds of things,
Was it the same presentation over and over and over?
No, all of them were unique. Yeah.
Because that's cruel and unusual punishment.
That is awful. Yeah.
I had to teach PowerPoint once for a whole week, and it was the same class, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And by the middle of the week, it's a PowerPoint class. It's one of the easiest pieces of software out there. I had to grab the manual because I couldn't remember. I'm like, did we talk about transitions yet? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, that was yesterday. Okay, hold on.
It all blends. It all blends on you, right? You're like, did I talk about that? When did I say that? Was that I even was having breakfast with my buddy on Thursday, telling him a story about it. And he's like, yeah, you already told me about that. I was like,
yeah,
I don't know when I said what, where, and how, and the week kind of blends together. So I guess I say all that to say, Dave, if you're be careful what you wish for around podcasting. Yeah. That's what I always say to begin with. Like, this is a dream come true in a lot of ways, to be able to have this kind of influence and do this kind of work. I love doing this kind of stuff. But even when you're doing stuff you love, and I was in my sweet spot like that. I love doing these kinds of things with it. I mean, you can't do it forever. Like, you need breaks in there. And it worked for I asked the audience who had been to all 11 sessions, because I had. I was like, who else has been to all 11? And I got in the chat room, a whole long list of the audience that had been dedicated to be at all, which is a lot. That's a lot to sit through in a week.
Yeah.
But
that's true too.
Just be ready. I have nothing planned for next week. Like, it is. I mean, I still have work, and I'm speaking at an event on Tuesday, but it's good. You got to give your brain some time to rest too. It's not just about physical rest. That's important, but you also have to give your brain some time to rest and make sure it's refreshed. So that's never more important than when I do these kinds of things. Most of the time, I never feel that. This kind of deal, you feel it. My brain is saying it wants to say something, but somehow that's not getting to the mouth. Blah, 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 blah. Right. So make sure you're getting plenty of brain rest time as well.
We need to take 2 seconds to say happy birthday to Mark Lawley, who is a member of the School of Podcasting. I see him in the chat room, and yesterday he was talking about how tomorrow would be his birthday. And tomorrow is today, so congratulations on that for one more trip around the sun.
Yeah.
And Todd the Gator says, I have so much respect for gaming streamers on Twitch that are on for 8 hours. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to Podcast Movement next week. I'll be at the Podpage booth. And one of the things that's great is Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast and Podgagement. He's like, hey, do you need a roommate? And I'm like, that's fine. I love Daniel. He's one of my best friends. And I was like, sure. But Daniel knows that, like, when I get to the room, like, that is not really the time to, like, let's talk a lot, because not that I'm fake at the booth, but you kind of want to be up. Hey, good to see you. What's going on? And generally, you are excited to see people. The thing I love at Podfest when I was there is you are excited to see people, that because you've got the summer camp going on, and like, oh my gosh, Harry Duran, what's going on, buddy? So good to see you. And then, so you are excited, and then you get new people. So you want to put your best foot forward and that whole 9 yards. And so by the time you get like, by the end of the night, I'm like, I need a little time where I'm not like, can I just kind of, can I just bring it down a little, so that'll be fun. I'm not sure what this question is. Randy's thrown this in here a couple of times. When I asked about shorts, most people were asking, will shorts help you make money? Oh, here's the thing about shorts. And this is where I'm not a super YouTuber, but I had a short on. I forget what it was. And I had to go to the bathroom. So I grabbed my cup. I head to the bathroom. And while I'm in the bathroom, I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually lunchtime. You know what? I'll do lunch. Okay. So I go to lunch, cook my burger, eat my burger, come back. I'm a middle-aged white guy, go to the bathroom again, because that's what we do. And then I come back to the desk.
They have a surgery for that, by the way.
Yeah. And I come back to my computer, and the short has been playing over and over. It just keeps repeating. Because that's what they do, right? You get done, and they're really good, especially if somebody's talking about a song. I've noticed where they'll be like, it'll start at the beginning of the, whatever.
It's a loop.
And it's a loop.
Right?
Yeah. And my question is when people are like, man, I just put up a short and I've got, 50 million views. And I'm like, is YouTube smart enough to know that was one of me? But does it still count that short as a view?
Well, it knows it's you. It knows it's one of you.
Right.
It also counts the number of plays. But I bet they have some kind of something that says, hey, if it's a certain number it's in succession, they count that a little bit differently. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it gets. Maybe all those things get counted as views. But maybe it knows. Maybe that's how some of them get. Listen, most people don't leave them on. You get with that loop, you get tricked into it the second time, right? You're like, oh, so you get two. You can double your reels if you just make a loop out of it, because most people can't see it's splitting, and so it goes through. And oh, I've already seen this, right? So it's a trick. It's just a trick to get one more view out of you. Right. You can do it that way, right? A lot of folks are.
Yeah. Chris Stone from castahead.net says wearing shorts will make you more money than actually posting shorts. Yeah.
I have shorts on right now.
I'm doing a Talk It podcast movement about should your podcast be on YouTube? And number one, I'm doing it on the YouTube stage. So, but I'm just presenting facts. Like, like the one, Jim, what do you think? Let me see if I can find this real quick. What do you think we do a 90-minute show on this, that we're doing today.
Yeah.
What would you say the average completion rate is on Apple?
Completion is all the way to the end. And
right.
Are you looking for a percentage?
Yeah.
14%.
On Apple?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And what do you think our percentage is on YouTube?
Even less.
Well, that is
9.
That is. Well,
7.
Here's the cool thing.
4. 3.
I'm sorry you've underbid. Yes. No, you ready for this? This is just looking at the last couple episodes. On Apple, we ranged anywhere from 73% up to 86%.
Oh,
so
wow.
for me, I'll take that. That's a C and a B, right?
Okay.
On YouTube, we ranged anywhere from 19% to 33%, which I understand if you can make it to 50% on YouTube, you're a god. But
on this show?
On this show, a 90-minute show. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay.
That was me.
Better than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. I did not expect to have that length.
Thank you, by the way. If you're one of those and you want to throw off our stats, just stay here the whole time and just let it play. Walk away. It's okay. Just let it keep playing on YouTube right now. We appreciate you doing that. So
now
thanks for doing that.
I did see this in the Captivate group. I'm not sure when this was. This has been in my Notejoy for a while, but I was like, oh, it says questions regarding YouTube. Within 24 hours of adding one of my existing podcasts to YouTube, it had a comment on an episode. A relevant, related to the discussion comment. So I checked the stats in YouTube Studio. Haven't dug deep into them yet, but just figured I'd look because it was curious that someone would have even checked it out on there yet. And the 300 episode podcast had a 1,100 views and almost 22 hours of watch time from 496 unique viewers, all without telling a single soul they were on YouTube yet. Now, of course, with the way YouTube counts views, that could be listening for all of a couple seconds and be worthless bots, etc. Yeah, I would say go check what country they came from would be the one. But the one comment leads me to believe that at least one person actually listened out there in the first 24 hours of adding it somehow. So I guess what I want to know, is there any good way to suss out from stats anything particularly useful, like captivates much more in-depth and accurate numbers, or should we just let it go and see what happens? My favorite number on any platform is how far did they make it? You know, the completion rate. Because I know when I look at the stats I have one, what I will call static video podcast on YouTube, and the completion rates are horrendous. It's, and they're usually from weird countries. So I don't know.
Yeah, but let's think about this for a second. So your YouTube channel, you have subscribers. It's hard to subscribe. It takes a lot of effort. You got to click the button twice, right? Click it, subscribe, and then do I do all or middle or none notifications, right? The bell. So you're subscribing. Do they still use the word subscribe? Yeah, I think they do on YouTube, right?
Yeah, they do.
So it's hard, right? They're your most engaged listeners by far. Like your YouTube subscribers, you should buy them lunch any chance you get the opportunity to do that, because they love you if they've subscribed to you on YouTube. When your video goes live, they get notified. And
if they've rang the bell.
Yeah. If they have the all one clicked, and even if they don't, they might, right? If they have just kind of depends on the algorithm, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So they're going to get a notification that you've put in, depending on how they've subscribed, they'll get the notification in one of a couple different ways, but they get a notification, and they're most likely to go back in that first 24 hours and go watch it. And then they're most likely to leave a comment because they just watched it. The farther your video gets away from that 24-hour period, the less likely, because a lot of those who do subscribe often subscribe to a lot of videos. And so in their feed, in their notifications feed, the videos from yesterday, from yesterday are long gone down the feed, and they're already getting new subscribers in there, right? So you're going to get most of your views fast. And those are going to be, in a lot of cases, those are going to be subscribers. And the highest propensity to get comments is going to be in the first 3 days. So that's just the way it's going to work. Now, everybody's situation's different. It's going to vary. You're going to tell me, Jim, no, I get them in a month. That's fine. That's awesome. Good for you. Like, it's great. But just as you think about the cycles of all those things that happen, yeah, that engagement is going to come early. Don't blow it. Like, don't blow that engagement when it comes in. If someone leaves a comment, get out there as soon as you can and engage in the comment. If you can, try to get them to comment back. I mean, all those things are very valuable in YouTube comments. And so if you're going to release a video, don't release one and go on vacation. Like, don't release one and go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, that's a giant mistake. Release it and be ready. Because chances are that engagement is going to come. I mean, the engagement that comes in the first 3 hours, if from a real person, you better be paying attention to who that is. I mean, I take some notes on who left now you'll get some spam stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real engagement. You should make note of that and find some way to engage with them, because they are absolutely, they subscribe to you most likely. They left a comment, which is super hard to get in a lot of cases, especially if it's not one of those lame comments like, if you disagree with me, put it in the chat or whatever, right?
Right.
Like some of those. I mean, if
I want to know what you think down here. Yeah.
No, right on. That is your most engaged listener. If you're not responding to them right away, if you don't have something set up to be able to talk back to them, you're missing a giant opportunity with those listeners.
Well, Todd the Gator says long form videos get anywhere from $4 to $45 per 1,000. YouTube shorts get around 0.001 per 1,000 views. That's hideous. Shorts have been good for brand awareness, but you aren't going to retire on them. He says actually 0.01 per thousand. And Randy says, well, they were acting like you're going to get, more money on shorts. And so in my research, according to our good friends at Perplexity, to get paid on YouTube, you need a subscriber count of at least 1,000, watch time of 4,000, valid public watch hours in the last 12 months, 10 million valid public short views. So get a couple computers going and hit it and go to lunch, I guess, in the last 90 days. So 10 million views in 90 days, which is why I think it's safe to say you're not going to make any money at shorts. You have to watch again their community guidelines, so don't say booger, that whole 9 yards. They do have this new thing they rolled out, and I'm not even mentioning it in my thing because it's a way to get super chats. So you can have 500 subscribers, 3 public videos in the last 90 days, 3,000 watch hours, and at least 12 months or 3 million shorts views in the past 90 days. And all that does, because you see it's called non-monetized, it enables you to fan funding, so that's their membership thing, and shopping features, which I've not looked into Google Shopping, but apparently it allows you to basically do affiliate marketing on YouTube. So I saw that, was like, interesting. But yeah, so and then I go into, because there are really some good things to be on YouTube, but then I point out, like, hey, like my CPM January and February on YouTube was $12. And I was like, wait, I have missed something somewhere. And then I looked in, and that something I was missing was my birthday. And so all those super chats that we got and are always deeply appreciated.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Boosted and so I went in and I was like, wait, because people are going nuts on my birthday, which was great. Again, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I go through, but remember, you keep 55% when you're on YouTube. I go, had those same people been awesome supporters and been on Supercast and again, I'm not complaining, but it's just like hundreds of dollars went to Google that would have gone to me because, Supercast, I think, takes 8%. I think Patreon takes somewhere between 8 to 12 versus 55, is what you keep. So they're taking whatever, 45, never do math. Yeah, 45%.
That's pretty easy math, Dave.
Yeah, it's like, because I'm sort of going, wait, no, the 55 is what you keep. Because I remember
carry
thinking,
the one divided by
pi. Yes, okay, exactly. So it's just one of those things where, again, now on the other hand, the slide I'm making today is if you want to do a true OG video podcast, I'm going to look at how long these files are and how big they are, and then go look at Podbean and Libsyn, and maybe, Blueberry, I think, would let you upload video. And that would go everywhere, that would do video. And that's when I go, and this is why, because I'm going to guess it's $80. I'm just pulling that out of my butt, but probably $80 a month on Libsyn. I think Podbean has an unlimited video thing for like $30 a month, or a decent amount. But nonetheless, that's why people use YouTube, because it's free. And I'm like, so when I say, they take 45%, that's to make up for the $80 a month you've been robbing them of. Now granted, they're YouTube, so they get better rates on bandwidth and stuff. So, people are talking about cross-app comments in the chat room. They're fun. Danny says, one of the many reasons I'm glad there aren't cross-app comments for audio podcasts, it's another layer you need to add to monitor, which can become a time suck. Absolutely. Yeah, when people talk about comments, I'm like, look, when I worked at Libsyn, we had websites with comments, and it was a nightmare. And then we moved to, I think we had Discuss for a while, and that became a thing because you had to pay for it. So then we eventually switched to Facebook. Like, if people wanted to leave a comment on your thing, because Facebook in theory doesn't make accounts for fake people, but it was just when people are like, oh, I want comments, I'm like, be careful again what you
wish for.
Yeah.
And I'm finding, I manage both a large LinkedIn and a large Facebook group, and by far, like hands down, easier to manage the LinkedIn group than it is the Facebook group, and it's the same people. Like, I don't know what goes wrong with us, when we get on Facebook. Like things go terribly, even
Oh man.
inside of professional groups. I mean, I had to
Yeah.
turn on heavy moderation in both groups, but by far I have to moderate the Facebook group 100 times more than I have to moderate the LinkedIn group. We just lose our minds on Facebook. People just, I don't know what gets into them over there. They just think it's not as bad as YouTube comments. I mean, YouTube comments are the dregs of commenting platforms, right? It's just some of the worst stuff. Maybe Reddit is not far away from that. I don't know why that is so bad, but I'm kind of finding now this conference that we did boosted our LinkedIn group because that's what we promoted instead of promoting the Facebook group, which, I'm a little questionable. Facebook has not yet necessarily monetized groups yet, or at least the ones that I run. We're not seeing ads in those groups yet. Notice the word there is yet. I fully believe it's coming. So I'm backing up that group with the LinkedIn group to be like, if we get into the future and Facebook craters its groups, or they decide we're going to start spamming inside of them, I have a mechanism to move people onto another platform. Again, backup being the theme here, right? So it is amazing to me. Although, Dave, I will counter that argument of the time suck by saying, build systems. Listen, what you do get is important. The comments you get, the emails you get, those kinds of things. You've got to find a way to triage them fast and get the worthless ones out of the way, and then you can't miss the important ones. I mean, I respond to emails within an hour or two generally, and for the work stuff. And generally, the comment I get the most is, "Wow, I didn't expect to hear from you so fast," right? In that, now I'm winning the day when it comes to meeting expectations, and that they email me because they're having a problem or something's wrong. I want to turn that back into a positive experience with them. If I get back to them 3 days later, that's not a positive experience for them, right? And so you have to do both. If you're going to get comments, you absolutely have to care about them, and then you got to find a way to suss out the worthless ones, and you have to answer the good ones fast. You have to. There's no choice in that.
Yeah, when I taught customer service, the absolute worst thing you can do for your customer is to ask for their opinion and then ignore it.
For sure.
You'll never get another opinion from that person.
Doesn't mean you have to do it, by the way. It doesn't mean you have to. You just can't ignore. You can't. You
have to acknowledge. Thank you for that feedback. Yeah,
taking in consideration all those things. Yeah, for sure.
All right. I want to say new B in the chat room here says it's kind of off topic. That's all right. We go off topic all the time. We don't really have a topic, for the record. Whatever you guys want to talk about, you can either go to askthepodcastcoach.com/question or just throw it here in the chat room. And of course, if you're listening to this later, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/voicemail and we'll get it there. But Newbie says, kind of off topic, but I'm wanting to start a podcast again. Of course, how can you do just one? I quit the first one. I've quit over 30, but I'm finding it hard to start knowing I quit before. Well, I got news for you. Eventually, Jim and I will quit this show. We don't know when. Yeah,
no.
But eventually.
Well, eventually, one of us will go.
Yeah, but I'll be wheeling up to the desk. It's Saturday morning. It's time for. Is it Saturday? I don't know.
And then I'll say, "What'd you say?
What?
Say that again."
Huh? Yeah. Huh? It'd be the guys from the Muppets. Huh? Yeah. Look at him. Oh, Spotify. What? Yeah. Anyway, I'm finding it hard to know I quit before. Any advice or something to read, to listen that may be help? I would come up with 10 ideas. This is how I when people say, I want to start a podcast, because I've started podcasts and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait. And you're all excited. This is going to be the best show ever. And episode 6 rolls around. You go, what do we got? And they go, I got nothing. And you're like, so I'd come up with a bunch of, first of all, would you talk about this for free? Because you're going to, when you first start out, come up with 10 topics, maybe 20. I had a guy at the School of Podcasting just came up with titles, not just titles for next year. I was like, that's crazy, but okay, good for you. You know, and then Danny brings up the other point. Why did you stop the first one? Was it a lack of listeners? Did you lose interest in the topic? Like, I stopped doing my show for musicians because I'm still a musician, but I wasn't playing in a band anymore. So I lost my source of content. Did you stop enjoying podcasting? Yeah, try to avoid that. So most of the shows, well, all the shows that I've quit, I just quit because it was like, I got to the point of like, time to do the podcast. And when you do that on a regular basis, you're like, yeah, it comes across as, all right, well, this is the coolest tool I could find. It wasn't that great, but you know, here it is. It's according to their web, it's just you're just bored. And so, you know, or was it it was too hard to meet your schedule? Well, either make the show shorter or do, you know, when you try to do that. He says, I was averaging 200 plus downloads. That is 10 classrooms of people. 10. That's like a very long hallway of classrooms of people that have chose not to watch videos, not to watch Netflix, not to listen to Sirius Satellite Radio, to check out your stuff. They are giving you their most valuable time. You have 10 classrooms of people that have done that. I just stopped because of life, time, and depression. Well, that's going to happen. And that's where what you can do in some cases, because there are times when, you know, babies, stupid babies come along. They're so selfish. It's all about them. Feed me, wipe me, wah, you know, and you're like, but daddy's doing a podcast. They don't care. So sometimes, you know, you have to tend to family or parents because it's kind of weird and odd, but as you get older, your parents become babies and they need to be taken care of and things like that. And they took care of you. And if you're a okay, you know, child, you should probably take care of your parents, even if they were really crappy. You know, life changes. It's really weird. So,
by the way, feed me. What'd you say? Feed me,
wipe me.
Wipe me. Those are words I say all the time. So just let's just be like
yeah.
Wah.
Yeah.
Oh, wah.
Wah.
Feed me, wipe me, wah.
Wah.
Yeah, I say that, guys.
Yeah, that's it. Wah. That's one of my favorite things. Danny says, I think I have about 15 podcasts that are now archived because I either stopped enjoying them or the format just didn't excite me. Yeah, weekly web tools. I'd come to the conclusion that any tool that I liked, I had talked about. I would search. I had all these resources that were, and I was just like, yep, I already talked about it. Yep, I already talked about it. The customer service show, I did 6 episodes and it just was me being angry. And it dawned on me that, you know, I had these delusions of like, hey, I've won awards for a customer service person. You know, I love customer service. Well, that was my job. Wasn't really my passion, you know? So, there was that one.
Danny makes a good comment though. You know, he had said, Newbie had said, you know, / depression, and then depression's hard, right? I suffer from it. Your mental health always comes first. Your podcast and listeners can work around your health as opposed to other ways around it.
Oh, dude.
And listen, absolutely. Listen, depression's a real thing, right? And so make sure you're dealing, if that's happening, that's a real thing. But you can, I think there's some things with podcasting that if you know, that you can do that will help with that depression a little bit. So listen, every situation's different. We're not mental health experts. We don't play one on TV, and we didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn and Express last night. So we're none of those things. So we're not giving any advice along those lines. But I just know, Dave, I mean, listen, I've struggled with depression in my past.
Yeah.
I just know when I started podcasting, some of that stuff got better for me, right? This connection that we have on Saturday morning, the stuff that I get to do at work, the Home Gadget Geeks community that I get to have, all of those things are feeding something for me. And you know what? My mental health has gotten better over the last 10 years, not gotten worse. So that's me. That's my experience. It's my personal place. But for me, podcasts would be good. It scratched an itch that helped me get better.
Yeah.
It helped me find something I just really love. Listen, I love the time we get together on Saturday mornings to do this. I walk away from, at 11 o'clock when we're done, I walk away more energized than I was when we started at 9:30, even though I just worked for 90 minutes. it
Yeah.
fired me up. So if you can recognize that in a way, the podcast may actually be part of the solution for depression.
Oh,
Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not subscribing anything to you, right?
yeah.
So just to be clear.
On Podcasting 2.0, Dave Jones talked about a blog post he wrote, and he was kind of getting frustrated with all these things that were being said. And Dave is a very meticulous speaker, and it took him a while to write this. And somebody said, that must have made you feel a lot better. And he's like, you know what? I never thought about it, but it did. And I always say podcasting, you might start with just journaling because that's not public. That can make you feel better. But if you put it out there, I do a show called Building a Better Dave, and a lot of times it's just me because I had an idea and thought it was entertaining. But man, when I was in an absolutely horrible marriage, that was the best $7 therapy I had, as long as I didn't talk about her, because that would make things worse. Not something I recommend. Complaining about your wife on a podcast, no, I wouldn't. That does not help the marriage at all. And luckily, I never went there. Chris Stone, Selfish Babies, my next band name. Ladies and gentlemen, this Saturday, Selfish Babies. Newbie says, I do have a list of about 20 people to interview people about hunting to learn from them. So that's the other thing. Like, why am I doing this? So, because sometimes because when you interview people, you are going to grow your network and you're going to be educated. If that's why I'm doing this, perfect. If the goal is I want to make money and retire, growing your network doesn't usually, unless you're going to charge people to be on the show, which no, that's not just let's not even go there. But I had somebody this week I was working with, and they were doing lots of interviews, and that's fine. I'm like, what's the goal of the show? And they're like, blah, blah, blah. And I said, how are you going to measure your success? And they're like, well, I guess with downloads. And I'm like, okay, but isn't the goal of the show to grow your business? And they go, yes. And I go, then shouldn't we be measuring the success of the podcast with revenue? And they're like, yeah. And I go, so does interviewing other people generate revenue? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. I go, now it grows your network, and those people should know people that either you need to interview or maybe your customers, or maybe they should be your customer. I said, but you got to get a call to action in there to talk about your stuff. And speaking of that, boy, what a segue. Let's do that while we're right here.
Nice job.
If you want to be an awesome supporter, you got to tell somebody about it, right? You can't just at the end go, oh, by the way, my website is .com. Thanks. All right, bye. And then go, why isn't anybody signing up? You have to slowly, specifically, and confidently ask people for your support. So askthepodcastcoach.com/support. And also, the show is brought to you by the School of Podcasting, brought to you where you can learn how to have a crappy radio voice just like me. No, we teach you through courses and unlimited coaching and a really cool community. And speaking of that, we actually just had a marriage counselor. We have a couple of those at the School of Podcasting. So use the coupon code COACH, which I looked, people have actually done that. So there you go. The goal of this show is to get you to sign up for the School of Podcasting, and it's worked. So I'm happy about that. We use Podpage. I also work there. That's how cool is Podpage? I work there now. And if you want to try Podpage, go to trypodpage.com. Some cool things coming down the pike over at Podpage that I can't talk about yet. And right now we're streaming via eCam live. You can find that by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/eCam. What I should do is add eCam and Podpage as sponsors, because one of the things that Podpage does is right now, if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/sponsors, you'll see Mark, and you'll see, based on a true story podcast. Why can't it Dan? Jeez, talk about not knowing words this week. And then I think the School of Podcasting is there, because then instead of saying askthepodcastcoach.com/eCam, I could just say askthepodcastcoach.com/sponsors. So there you go. And if you want more Jim Cullison, and hey, who doesn't want more Jim Cullison, then go over to theaverageguy.tv and check out the show Home Gadget Geeks. And I believe that leads us to, it does, our good friend, the Wheel o' Names, which I had, here we go, set up. Will it be Jody Krangle or the ladies over at Keep the Flame Alive? We got Max Trescott. We've got Ed Sullivan, Ross Brand, all these awesome supporters. We love them all. And we pick one every week to be the featured supporter of the week. And it looks like it's going to be Ross. It is the one and only Ross Brand. If you want to learn, the show he has, Ross Brand on broadcasting, he is the live streaming king. And I know for a while there, Ross was talking a lot about Substack. I guess Substack added live streaming. And so if you want to learn about anything live streaming, broadcasting, Ross Brand is the guy. Ross, thank you so much for being an awesome supporter. I deeply appreciate that. And again, if this show has, let's say, saved you time, saved you money, saved you headaches, if it kept you educated, well, then simply go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. Sure, there are ways that you can sign up to support us each month, but if you just want to do a one-time donation, that is over there as well. But go ahead.
Before we transition, can I wrap up one thing from the previous?
I thought about that as I was doing this. I was like, you know what? We didn't really wrap that up well.
No, we did. We did a nice job.
Yeah.
We had a speaker at one of the sessions this week who used this Josh Whedon quote that it's gotten kind of famous over the last couple years, attributed to him. And the quote is, "Whatever makes you weird is probably your greatest asset."
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And there's in the strengths world, in my world, oftentimes we spend a lot of time thinking about what we're really good at, and for most of our lives, that thing that made us weird or that thing that we were really good at, everybody tried to get us to turn it down a little bit. They'd always be like, "Hey, settle down on this." Like for many of us who do podcasting, communicating in this form has always been something we've loved to do. And when we tried to do it, I remember even Dave, and you probably got some of this too. When we first started podcasting, people, the first question would be like, "Well, what's a podcast?" Right? You had to tell them. And then they'd be like, "Well, that's weird." Right. Right. We were kind of labeled as weirdos in those early days of podcasting. Even Steve Jobs made fun of us, right? Amateur hour.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's a lot of value as we think about these things that we're doing, and even in the podcasting world, of saying, where have I been labeled as a weirdo in the past? And by the way, I don't want to put that label on anybody. I'm just using the quote here, right? But where have I been labeled in the past? And is that really my greatest asset? And I've got to kind of shut off some of those. I got to shut off some of those naysayers in some way. And I always want to say, don't figure out how to dial it down. Figure out how to turn it up.
Right.
Put yourself in those situations where you can really take advantage of that. I've said this quote before in my freshman English class that I obliterated. I mean, I failed it so bad. It was horrific. And the English teacher, in the note she sent home to my mom, said, it's going to take a little more than Jim's charismatic smile to pass my class. In other words, Jim didn't quite have the discipline it took. It was an honors English class. I shouldn't have been there to begin with, but it was a learning lesson for me. But there were already some clues to the talent of influencing that were coming up in that, as a freshman in high school, some of those things. That thing which didn't make me successful in a highly academic English class, I've never been an academic, has made me more successful in what I'm doing from a podcasting space. So think about that thing that it maybe in the past has been labeled negative. And if it's something you really like doing, that may be your greatest asset. Don't turn it down. Lean into it. Turn it up. Find ways to really use it in a way that's powerful and serves other people. And I think that's the other key on this in podcasting. We somehow think it's about us. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with us serving other people. Dave and I are here on Saturday mornings because we want to generate content and context around podcasting to help people be better podcasters. It's not about us. It's about you listening. Right? It's about you in the chat room. This is why we've done it for 8, 9, whatever, how many years we've done it.
A lot. Yeah.
Because we love serving you, right?
Well,
find out where you're serving people.
And just to key on that, I'm wearing a shirt today, in my own way, it looks like AC/DC and it says highway to, hey, look, a squirrel. Because, if I grew up today, I'd be on Ritalin. They'd be pumping me full of all sorts of drugs. But, I remember when I was married, wife number 2 was like, you really, like, you're all over the place sometimes. And I'm like, yeah. I go, but I said, what's interesting is every job I've had, it doesn't matter. I start off technical, and before I leave that company, I'm in the marketing department. I was there at 8 years at Libsyn, started off tech support. Where did I end up? Marketing department. Why? Because Dave's a creative guy. I'm not creative. I'm ADHD. So as I'm doing all these winding curves, I hit stuff. They go, oh, I never even thought about that. And so I make fun of myself when I do an interview, or if I do something where I'm like, all right, it's time for a 10-second tangent because, it's me. This is what I'm going to do. And so to go back to the one point about, picking your schedule, so many people say, I'm going to do a weekly show, and then they try to cram their show into their life schedule. Record a couple episodes, get yourself a kitchen timer, or use the thing on your phone. And like when you're doing prep for the interview, and then you record the interview, and sure, the interview was 20 minutes, but you were on Zoom for an hour with that guy. That's an hour and 20 minutes, record all that and then go, oh, wow, it took me 14 hours this week to make this 30-minute podcast. Do I have 14 hours a week to do a podcast? And you go, no. Well, guess what? You're not doing a weekly show if you want to keep your sanity, because we try to do that. And then you end up with things like, are you going back in the studio again? Right? All of a sudden you start to lose your support because, your kids don't recognize you anymore. That's bad, and you need your health, both physical and mental. You need the support of those around you, and there's a third part of that chair. I used to do a talk on this. You need your support. You need, and the desire. So what happens is you need that passion, because when people start complaining that you're never around, you missed another baseball game, well, that saps your passion. And which also can attack it's a delicate dance, but
it is.
Yeah. So
it is. I wish we could live in a world, the ND stands for disorder, right? In that, and it's got, of course, it has a negative connotation for us. I wish we could, instead of saying that, we could say, I have the creative gene.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we would spin that more in a positive way, because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of creatives, a lot of influencers, a lot of those very dynamic personalities. Not that people who don't have this aren't dynamic. I'm just trying to say, in some cases where we have this, a lot of them they're creatives, and I just wish we would celebrate it and call it something really positive, like oh yeah, that's your creative gene. That's what makes you awesome.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and some of this is just some old thinking of, because we were in a different, we trained and educated in a different way. Society had a different set of values at that case. But I think today we could really celebrate that creativity and say, for folks that are like, oh yeah, I am distracted. And I'm like, great, because you're thinking about a whole bunch of different things. Let's figure out how to turn that into something productive for you. So you can we can take that which has been not celebrated in the past and celebrate it. Right. And that just takes a little bit of work to turn that around. So,
and that's the one thing that can make your show different is you. And so when we take our thoughts and run it through AI so that it looks like everybody else, you're kind of shaving off some of the best part of the show.
For sure.
But yeah, it's, and I remember when I first started, like in the early days, and this is so dumb. This is how, like, your ego just gets the best of you. I remember I started, there was Rob Walsh was doing kind of a show about podcasting with Podcast 411. There was a guy that was doing a rock show. There was somebody else that was doing, this show and that show. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to be the podcast guy. And I actually thought, like, all right, nobody's going to start another show about podcasting because, well, that guy's already doing one. Right. How dumb is that? And so in comes, Cliff Ravenscraft, and then John Lee Dumas comes in, becomes a millionaire. I would be lying if I said, oh, now on one hand, I was like, hey, he's bringing a bigger audience and we all boats float and blah, blah, blah. But there was a part of me that was like going, what do they have that I don't have? What's wrong with me? Blah, 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 and that's when you have to know your why. And when you get, and look, I'm human. I have those spells. That's when I'm like, hold on, why am I doing this? Because I love to help people, and I want to help people get their voice heard, because we all deserve to be heard. And at that point, I go, quit looking in the mirror and crying, and let's go back to looking at my audience and seeing what they need so I can serve them, because that always makes me feel better. And that's where, when you get those emails that say, your show really helped me, that I was having a horrible day, my boss is a jerk, I heard it and you made me laugh, thank you so much for that. Save that email, because there's going to be a day when you're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. This is, blah, 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 Spotify kicked me out, whatever happened, right? Go back and look at those emails, and that will, in some cases, put gas back in your tank. I've talked about it on this show before, but I had a guy that said he was going to kill himself. His best friend had died. He'd lost his job of 20 years and was pretty sure he had cancer. And he heard me say, sometimes starting a podcast can give you a purpose. And he said, so instead of killing myself on Halloween, I decided to start a podcast. And he said, I basically credit you with saving my life. And I'm like, I'm talking about microphones and, whatever, AI. I don't expect to save anybody's life. But that's happened not just to me, but to other people. Here what Jody says, someone critiqued my show saying I laugh too much, but I love Jody's laugh. That was kind of a blow. I've overcome it, and I'll just be me. Yeah, damn it. I gotta be me. I got to be me. Yeah. So,
nicely done.
Thank you. What was, Sinatra's? I did it my way.
Did it my way.
Elvis, right? All those guys. You got to. And welcome to Humble Brag Theater. But when I got inducted in, well, I always hate this point because it sounds weird, but when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, my next episode really messed with my head, because I'd start recording. I'm like, is this Hall of Fame worthy? Is this something and I was like, and it took me a second. I was like, wait a minute. I got in being myself. So just follow my gut and do what I want. And those that like me will listen, and those that don't can piss off, right?
Yeah. Yes. Although there is a tension right in there. You can go too far the other way too, where you're just like, I'm just going to do whatever I want. Well, I mean, if you do that and you don't listen to your audience, you see the results that you might get it. Yeah. I love that tension. Listen, I a lot of people struggle with that self-doubt, and then they just want it to go away. You actually need it. Like, you need something inside of you going, are you good enough? Yeah. Now you can't let that consume you, but I think it's a good check, right? I think it's a good, because you then are evaluating, okay, am I doing the best I can possibly do? Because we're always learning, we're always growing, we can always do it better, right? And so don't run from that, right? Don't run away and be like, don't suppress it so it goes away, because that just, then all of a sudden you start making really bad decisions. Use it as the checks and balances. Like, every system needs checks and balances. Use it as that motivation to be like, yeah, could I do that a little bit better? I mean, just at the beginning of the show, I started with like, hey, sorry about last week. Like, I should have done things differently. If I could have, I would have. You said you're being too hard on yourself or whatever. But no, that's a good, for me, that's a good self-reflection of always like, hey, am I in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time? Use that doubt as fuel to get better, not to run away from. And listen, it's a hard thing to do. It's super hard. I self-evaluate every single day as I'm driving home from work. I'm like, how many dumb things did I say today? Listen, I self-evaluate after this show every week. Dave and I say goodbye. We disconnect, and then I walk upstairs and make lunch. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how many dumb things did I say in that show today? Like, that's the worst, right? Now, you can't let that consume you. Right. But if you can figure out how to use that doubt, how to use that criticism to turn it on its side and use it for performance, and say, okay, there's some things I could probably do better. I could probably practice at this. I could probably have things set up a little bit better in advance. I probably could fill in the blank for you, whatever that is, right? Embrace it. Don't deny it. Don't try to push it away. Embrace it and say, okay, it's here. I'm going to get better on this. That's for me, that was a life-changing experience when I figured out to stop fearing it and start using it.
Yeah, there's somebody brings this up on Reddit. It says, I'm receiving a lot of hate from family. I'm receiving a lot of hate from family about my podcast. I thought it was just a fun idea to explore my creativity. My mom says podcasts are cringe, and my dad just agrees with her. I'm sure people are talking behind my back. That sounds a little paranoid, but okay. I could be. I just want to do this thing without getting the hate. I wish my mom was supportive. Well, if your show is for 30-year-old gamers, your mom's not a 30-year-old gamer. So, she may not be the target audience. Now, if she is the target audience and both your mom and dad say, like Jim said, the first thing you want to do is go, do they have a point? Am I taking too long to get to the main point? Maybe they have a point. Maybe I should do that. So, there's always do they have a point, and are they your target audience? Because those are the two things that help you decide, am I going to implement this feedback or not? Because we've talked about the one guy that sent us like 3 pages of notes, which was great. He just wanted a completely different show. He's like, you should bring on guests and interview them. And we're like, hey, thank you for the feedback. But that's not what this is called. Ask the Podcast Coach. We answer questions live. That's what we do here. And what you're suggesting is a completely different show. And so, that's the thing to keep in mind. But a lot of times, like, my whole family doesn't listen. And I'm like, yeah, your whole family's not your target audience. Nobody in my family listens to this show. They don't want to start a podcast. Why would they? My brother will every now and then pop in and I'm like, hey, you look like you're having fun. I'm like, I am. He's like, well, good, keep it up. But that's it. Danny says the best thing I ever did was get a podcast audit. And he says it made such a difference in so many ways. Yeah. He said taking stock is so key in everything. Basically, life, love, podcasting, maybe in that order. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's where I go, don't ask. That guy's actually getting feedback from his family. Because I always say, don't ask mom, because mom will go, oh, it's great. So when mom's like, ew. Yeah, so that's maybe a good mom. You never know. A lot of times moms are just like, oh, look at you. You're so professional. Look at all the lighting. Yeah, they're not talking about the content, Yeah, so you have to be careful with that. Have you heard West Coast Laugh? Now, that would be an interesting interview. I'm not sure what Randy's doing his own show today. Thanks, Randy. I appreciate that. I've never heard of it, though, to be honest. How does this, Danny says, how does this podcast help you fulfill my dream of you being a doctor? Yeah, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Hey, Mom, I'm going to do a show about this, whatever, TV show. I'm going to do a show about Lost. I know it's been off the air for 15 years, but I really want to talk about Lost. And Mom's like, but I wanted you to be a lawyer. I wanted you, you were going to go to law school. I wanted you to go to Harvard. Yeah, it's like, so.
You must have grown up on the East Coast then.
I guess so, yeah. So that's always kind of tricky.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Listen, it's always good. There's always kernels of truth in criticism, right? Whether you agree with it or not, there's always a kernel of truth in there somewhere. Take it for what it is, but also say, and I threw in the chat, the best phrase I ever learned to say is, that's okay. I didn't make it for you.
That's it.
Appreciate the feedback. It's especially when I started doing a tech geek show, people are like, what are you doing? Like what? And it's funny. My neighbor now across the street, he listens to Home Gadget Geeks. And I see him all the time, and he's become a listener. And they were traveling, and he said something, or I said something on the show that he's a line guy for OPPD, our power company here in Omaha. And so he went during storms, and when the lines go down, he's got to go out and fix them. And he just spent 16 hours a day over the last 6 days fixing power lines to the storm we had last Wednesday. Well, on Thursday, I said on my podcast, this is a good story of engagement. So I said, spent all this money and time putting this generator in the house, and the whole storm, I'm expecting the power to go down, and it never does. And I said on the show at 2:11, because he reminded me of this when he called me, he said, "You wished that the power went down? You know, dude," he goes, "I just wanted to yell at you. Like, I spent the last week fixing that," right? And it was all in jest, right? But you know what? He did. He called me. As soon as he heard that, he stopped the podcast and called me. And we had this audience engagement moment, right? It was a moment. It was a moment in the podcast that really triggered that engagement piece. And I said, "Oh, I'll retract it on the last podcast, on the next podcast. I'll play it into the show, and then I'll retract it and say I'm sorry," and those kinds of things. But gives you those moments. It gives you those I never thought in a million years I'd have a neighbor. Like, he's my neighbor,
right?
Listening to my podcast. That's kind of crazy, right?
I did hear my cousin. I occasionally do a show that is somewhat God related called Feeding My Faith. And my cousin's like, "Hey, that was really good." And I was like, "I didn't know you listened to podcasts." But yeah, going back to Randy was talking about this. I need to look up West Coast. Apparently it's a YouTube channel. And he said, "I have a friend that hates that laugh, but I like it." Yeah, there are always going to be those people like it. And that's the hardest part, because we all want to be liked by everyone. And yet not everyone is going to like us. So you have to be okay. You know, my favorite thing, speaking of Daniel J. Lewis, when we did the Podcasters Roundtable, it was me, Ray, and Daniel. And it was great. It was cross-promoting. We all did podcasts about podcasting. We'd get together like, Super Rangers and, Super Rangers, Power Podcasters Unite. And so our audience would check out the other show. And Daniel, if you want some in-depth, like super deep, super detailed stuff, then Daniel J. Lewis is your guy. I, a lot of times, am, "Hey, here's what I think you need to know." Again, a little ADD. Daniel is focused and to the point and deep. Different style, same topic. And so Daniel had somebody go, "Yeah, I went over and listened to that Dave guy. Like, guy's goofy." And I had somebody listen to Daniel's show, and they said, "Yeah, it's not bad, but like, that guy's kind of dry. They're used to my goofiness." And so where Daniel is like, "Just the facts. Here they are, and they're deep, and there's lots of them, and everything you wanted to know about bit rates or something," right? It was awesome stuff. Two completely different styles. Not everybody's going to like you. And it's not that they hate you as a person. It's not the style, right? Some people put ketchup on their fries. Some do not. Some eat them with ranch dressing. What? Some dunk French fries in chocolate milkshakes. What are you, crazy? Now your chocolate milkshake's all salty.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Like, that makes a chocolate milkshake better.
Yeah. So it's always tricky.
Or mayonnaise, right?
Realize, I've said it before, your podcast is a recipe. It's not a statue, and it's your show. So you get to, here's a classic example. You ready for this? It's the last week of the month. So today I should be working on the question of the month, but I forgot it was the end of the month. So I've been working on an episode for Ray from Around the Layout, who's going to give me some feedback later. He's a member of the School of Podcasting. Ray does Around the Layout, which is about model trains. And I've been excited about this episode. And you know what? I know my audience is going to expect the question of the month, but it's my show. Guess what? I'm doing Ray's episode. I'll do the question of the month when I come back from Podcast Movement. It's your show. You can do whatever you want. I don't think anybody's going to be like, "Well, he said we needed my answers by the 28th, and then he didn't use them till 2 weeks later. How dare you?" So, yeah, Danny says, "Spending time worrying about people who are not your audience only takes you away from the people who are." This is why I love Danny Brown. Recognize the later and focus on them. Yeah. There's a Bible thing about that, right? Throwing seeds on stuff that doesn't grow.
Stones.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Move on.
Ground.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But holy cow, look at the clock. Jim, what's coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
Well, I did enough this week, so I took the week off.
I was going to say.
I will say this, just as we wrap up the feedback conversation. Also, friends, as you're giving feedback, do it in a way like, don't just shotgun the thing and blast somebody with it. I'm guilty of this. How you give feedback is just as important as how you receive it. So as you're giving that feedback, just know there's a human on the other side. So I'll end it with that.
That's good stuff. Yeah, if you can, mix in some good stuff. So it's like, hey, well, the audio was horrible and you were all over the place, but you did press record, and a lot of people never get that courage. You can always mix in that. But yeah, we can, and one of my mantras, my first job out of college, had a giant sign when you walked in that just said constant improvement. And that's always, to me, I'm always thinking we could get a little better. And that's the other thing of being a teacher. I mean, I learned, when I was teaching software, you are always learning the next version. Like, you never stopped learning. And I'm kind of that same way now. It's with AI. Every time I think I've got it, there's something else to lose. So, but we are here next week. I'll be talking about podcast movement evolutions and whatever else happened. And thanks to everyone in the chat room today. That was a good discussion. I had fun. So that was good. So thanks so much. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that fun stuff. If you're listening to us, again, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/voicemail, and we'll play your question on next week's episode. And while you're out there, askthepodcastcoach.com/follow, askthepodcastcoach.com/support. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.